In Norway, a fish flies and hits a weather reporter during his live broadcast.
The reporter stumbles but soon stands with composure to continue his report. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. The Joint Foreign Chambers of the Philippines favors the removal of the restrictive provisions in the Constitution. The Senate honors former United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Hungary approves Sweden's bid to join the NATO alliance. Poke fans cheer as their beloved Pokemon franchise turns 28. And the Philippine Football Federation decides to move on from the Ascals moniker moving forward.
Las Vegas, Nevada.
España,
Paris, France.
United Kingdom,
Washington, D.C.
London Bureau, Papua New Guinea,
In New York, New York.
Washington, D.C.
Mata ng Agila. Mata ng Agila.
Mata ng Agila International.
Trusted, connected, on point.
The Joint Foreign Chambers of the Philippines have favored the removal of the restrictive provisions of the 1987 Constitution. In the statement submitted to House Speaker Martin Romualdez, they acknowledge the government's mandate to protect its interests, a reason there is restriction in the entry of foreign direct investments or FDI. JFC, however, argued that the entry of FDI into the Philippines will be faster if there is some relaxation through legislation or executive regulations. The 2023 ASEAN Investment Report showed that the FDI flow in the region has increased by 5.5% in 2022 to a record of $224 billion, or 17% of global FDI. Meanwhile, ASEAN FDI stocks were recorded at $3.6 trillion in 2022, double the amount recorded in 2015. JFC added that the Philippines did not benefit from this gain, as the country's FDI flow dropped from $12 billion in 2021 to $9.2 billion in 2022. This made the Philippines left behind by the neighboring countries in ASEAN after yielding a 4.1% share of the total FDIs compared to the 5.7% recorded in 2021.
Former President Rodrigo Duterte softened his tone toward President Bongbong Marcos, saying he was comfortable supporting his successor in easing economic restrictions in the Constitution. Several weeks ago, Duterte and Marcos were firing broadsides at each other since the Davao rally organized by the Dutertes on January 28. Duterte addressed a prayer rally in Cebu City on Sunday, coinciding with the 38th anniversary of EDSA People Power. He said he was open to amendments to the Constitution as long as Marcos will not propose term extensions for incumbent officials.
Chacha, okay. Basta si Marcos moingon pagkumit siya sa tao nga dili siya mudagan pag-usap.
Duterte also said Marcos had not committed any big mistake as president so far. According to Duterte, Marcos is more dignified than him. This after the former president labeled Marcos as a drug addict during a rally in Davao, which Marcos fired back, saying that it's the fentanyl that was triggering Duterte's tirades. Some members of the House of Representatives welcomed Duterte's support for economic charter change. House Deputy Speaker David Suarez said he was happy with the former president's statements, but he would be happier if it would be echoed by Duterte supporters. The House, acting as a committee as a whole, lists the specific provisions that need to be amended in deliberations on resolutions of both houses or RBH 7.
The Commission on Elections reported that since the start of voter registration for the 2025 midterm polls, over 640,000 applications have flooded in. In the latest tally spanning February 12 to 24, a diverse pool of 643,987. Out of this number, comprising 335,831 women and 308,156 men, are eager to participate in shaping the nation's future. Leading the charge, Calabarzon boasts an impressive 115,167 registrations, closely followed by the National Capital Region with 95,557 enthusiastic applicants. Meanwhile, Central Luzon is at third with 68,676, followed by Central Visayas with 51,199 and the Davao region with 36,937 registrants. The COMELEC is fervently working through the 7-month registration window with a target of 3 million voters.
The Senate has approved the bill declaring the maritime zones in the Philippines on the final reading. Senate Bill number 2492 demarcates the exact meters and bounds of the nation's maritime entitlements under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, and other international laws. Senator Francis Tolentino noted that the said bill also considers the artificial islands within the country's exclusive economic zone as part of its jurisdiction. Tolentino noted that if the measure is passed into law, the Philippine government will submit it to the UN to be recognized by other countries.
The Facebook page of the Philippine Coast Guard, or PCG, has been hacked. PCG spokesperson Rear Admiral Armando Balilos said they are working now with the Philippine National Police Anti-Cybercrime Group and Meta to regain page access.
Nagpapatulong din po tayo sa mga kaibigan natin sa PNP Cyber Crime Division and coordinating sa DICT. So lahat ng mga yon ay tinitingnan natin na makakatulong sa atin and hopefully ma-recover natin.
The PCG had last access to the page at 10 a.m. on Monday, February 26. Meanwhile, the hacking incident occurred at 6 p.m. on Monday. The PCG said the unknown entity did not leave any digital traces on the official email address and the mobile number used by the Coast Guard Public Affairs for two-factor authentication. The hacker successfully posted 3 videos on the PCG Facebook page showing clips from movies to TV shows. Balilos said after the cyber attack on the PCG's official Facebook page may have been due to malware or software specifically designed to damage, break into, or gain illegal access to a computer system. Last February 15, the PCG resolved the security breach of an unknown entity on its X account. In January, the PCG also received an alert from the Department of Information and Communications Technology, or DICT, over a foiled hacking attempt on its website, which was traced in China. But this time, Balilo declined to comment on whether the West Philippine Sea issue had anything to do with the hacking incidents.
Mahirap mag-speculate, Mads. I-check natin mabuti at tignan natin kung baka ordinaryo lang din na hacker na napaglaruan yung Coast Guard kasi masyadong mataas yung engagement natin sa social media. Wala tayong pinangahawakan na ebidensya.
Meanwhile, the Philippine Navy said it has encountered signal jamming of its ships in the West Philippine Sea. Though there has been an increase in comm interference incidents, the Philippine Navy clarified that the situation is normal and not alarming. Navy spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, Commodore Roy Vincent Trinidad, also declined to confirm the Chinese forces were behind the signal interference. He said that they cannot determine whether this is why the Chinese ships can monitor and prepare whenever the Philippines conduct rotational and resupply missions in the West Philippine Sea. But Trinidad said they are determining the source of the interference affecting the electronics and communication equipment of Filipino ships in the West Philippine Sea.
There are many ways for a superpower to know what goes on the other side. Checking on the communication is just one of them. So we could only surmise that they are doing all efforts to be able to monitor us, just as we're also doing all efforts to be able to prevent ourselves from releasing whatever information may give them advance notice of our plans.
The Senate has honored former United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon for his contributions to global diplomacy, peacekeeping efforts, and sustainable development.
His visit to Tacloban City after Typhoon Yolanda in year 2013 symbolized his solidarity with affected communities and his dedication to climate adaptation and resilience building efforts.
We are afflicted by natural calamities that turn into haunting disasters, and this worsen as the years go by. Even as we speak, we are under the threat of El Nino. Not only will our crops die, the livelihood of our people will be at risk. Climate change is not only imminent, it is here and now. And we cannot afford to waste even 1 second, Mr. President.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. later received ban as he expressed his support for the Global Green Institute. Ban's visit to the Senate also marked the adoption of Senate Resolution 936, or the Senate's acceptance to ratify the agreement between the Philippines and the Global Green Growth Institute, or GGGI. GGGI is an international organization that pushes sustainable economic growth on developing countries. Meanwhile, Ban also reaffirmed the bilateral relations between the Philippines and South Korea as the two nations will mark their 70 years.
Looking back, bringing the entire world together to agree to the landmark UN Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Climate Change Agreement, both in 2015, was really my proud achievement. But our work is certainly not done yet.
The Department of Budget and Management, or DBM, has announced a significant boost for the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program, or 4Ps, in 2024. Over 4.4 million program members are set to benefit with the recent allocation of over 106 billion pesos. DBM Secretary Amena Pangandaman said, as directed by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., we will ensure that 4Ps under the Bagong Pilipinas will be provided with needed funding support, as this program serves as a lifeline that bridges dreams to reality for many Filipinos. She emphasized that this year's budget for the 4Ps will cater to essential needs, including 750 monthly health subsidies and 600 monthly rice subsidies for the program's beneficiaries. The fund will also extend to educational subsidies, providing vital support to over 7 million students with monthly allowances ranging from 300 to 700 pesos.
Coming up, Joko Widodo's son is set to become Indonesia's vice president. Joe Biden hopes for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas soon. And a Houthi attack on a Red Sea ship causes massive damage. Stay tuned for more stories around the globe when we return.
Kinalaman sa pang-araw-araw na pamumuhay.
Ano sa palagay niyo?
Katiwalian at korupsyon sa kung saan-saan.
Ano sa palagay niyo?
Kalusugan.
Ano sa palagay niyo?
Edukasyon.
Ano sa palagay niyo?
Hanap buhay.
Ano sa palagay niyo?
Ang daming issue. Samahan ninyo sina Ali Soto at Batpi Daza sa pagbusisi sa lahat ng yan at iba pa. Ano sa palagay nyo? Year 3 na!
Let's live together. Sunday 25.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. The Guinean capital, Conakry, is at a standstill on the first day of an open-ended general strike. This a test for the junta, who have been in power since 2021. Ralph Cornell reports.
2 youths were shot dead Monday as a general strike paralyzes Guinea's capital. Schools, shops, and markets were empty early Monday. There was little to no traffic. The hospitals only offered skeletal services. This as youths set up barricades on major roadways. The sporadic clashes broke out in some outskirts. Unions have urged public and private sectors to strike. They demand the release of a prominent media activist, lower food prices, and an end to media censorship. The junta that seized power in 2021 have banned demonstrations while muzzling critics. Ralph Cornell from Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Indonesian President Joko Widodo's son, Gibran Rakabuming Raka, is set to become his nation's vice president. This is after Defense Minister Prabowo Subianto won the votes of the majority in the presidential polls. Meanwhile, an exit poll conducted by a research firm showed the Gibran significant lead in the general elections. This, however, raised questions over the influence of his father, the president, as critics accused him of establishing a political dynasty before leaving his office. President Widodo is barred for a third term as Indonesia's leader and is set to step down this October.
The National Election Committee of Cambodia has confirmed that the long-ruling Cambodian People's Party has won an expected landslide victory in the election for the country's Senate. The committee began releasing results by the constituency after earlier announcing that a provisional count showed the Cambodian People's Party won 55 of the 58 seats that were contested on Sunday. The chamber has 62 members, with 2 senators appointed by King Norodom Sihamoni and 2 others by the National Assembly, which is the lower house of parliament. The vote paves the way for Hun Sen, who is the ruling party president, to become Senate president, allowing him to hold an official position in government after stepping down last year. After serving as prime minister for 38 years, he was succeeded by his son, Hun Manet. The Senate's duties are largely ceremonial, focusing on ratifying measures passed by the National Assembly. But the Senate president serves as active head of state when the king is absent from the country.
Tuvalu's political landscape sees a significant shift as former Attorney General Fetti assumes the role of the nation's new prime minister.
mai tua mea ko neko tau mama mea katoa ona ko tine whakatino te vahe ngā tēnei ara whakawhtai mo te ono sai mai whakawhtai.
This development follows closely on the heels of a general election that brought to the forefront Tuvalu's diplomatic relations, particularly with Taiwan. With unanimous support from his 15 lawmaker colleagues, Fetti emerged as the sole nominee for the position and was subsequently declared prime minister-elect without the need for a vote. Teo's appointment marks a transition from the pro-Taiwan stance of his predecessor, Koseya Natano, who lost his seat in the January 26th election. The formal inauguration of Teo and his cabinet is scheduled to take place later this week.
Hungary's parliament finally ratified Sweden's NATO bid, clearing the last obstacle for an enlargement of the military alliance spurred by Russia's war with Ukraine. David Oria reports.
Hungary's vote ends more than a year of delays that left fellow NATO partners furious as Ukraine battles Russian troops. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson says it was a historic day. The start of the Russia-Ukraine war in February 2022 prompted Sweden and neighboring Finland to apply to join the bloc. That ended a long-standing stance of non-alignment in both countries. While Finland, however, became the 31st member of the US-led defense alliance in April last year, Sweden's bid was held up. Turkey only ratified it last month. On Monday, Hungary finally followed. 188 members of parliament voted in favor and 6 against Sweden's accession. Earlier Monday, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán asked fellow lawmakers to approve Sweden's bid. Orbán told Parliament that the Swedish-Hungarian military cooperation and Sweden's accession to NATO will strengthen Hungary's security. Ahead of the vote, Orbán's nationalist Fidesz party indicated it would support Sweden's bid. All opposition parties except for far-right Our Homeland movement were in favor of ratification. David Oria from Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
China's Commerce Ministry says the latest sanctions of the United States against Russia and its allies threaten global trade relations. On Friday, the United States Treasury announced a new list of sanctions against 500 individuals and entities in Russia, including several Chinese companies, citing Russia-related reasons. China opposes these restrictions, saying the approach of the United States is a typical example of unilateral sanctions and economic coercion, which undermines international economic and trade rules and order. China also claims that these sanctions damage the security and stability of global industry and supply chains. China's Commerce Ministry vows to take all necessary measures to safeguard the rights and interests of Chinese enterprises. Last week, the European Union and the United Kingdom also sanctioned several Chinese companies. Beijing accused Brussels and London of deliberately ignoring the positive development trends in their relations with China. China's Commerce Ministry said that sanctions against Chinese companies have no basis in international law. It also warned that restrictions, unless rescinded, would hurt EU's and UK's economic and trade relations with China.
In the United States, President Joe Biden announced fresh sanctions against Russia. But analysts say Biden's 200-page list does not include companies and sectors from the metals industry or more energy-related punishments or secondary sanctions on banks. The analysts believe the United States is unwilling to go after revenue streams that experts argue would really cripple Russia's economy, as this would also send shocks to Washington's economy.
Former United States President Donald Trump and his co-defendants are appealing the ruling against them in the New York civil fraud case. New York Attorney General Letitia James accused Trump and his co-defendants of fraudulently misstating the value of their assets. Trump's appeal, however, does not state the judgment against his co-defendants, meaning they should pay $464.6 million, inclusive of pre-judgment interest. Legal experts say that to pause the judgment, in which Attorney General James could not try to seize Trump's assets to force him to pay, Trump will have to either pay the cash he owes plus an additional amount for interest into a court-controlled account while the case gets appealed. Or another legal option is Trump could post an appeals bond in which a third-party company guarantees his ability to pay. Trump has denied misstating his assets, stating in a deposition in April 2023 that he had roughly $400 million in liquefied assets.
The Pentagon released the results of a 30-day review of senior officials' handling of Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's recent hospitalizations. The finding concludes that there was no attempt to obfuscate Austin's cancer diagnosis and medical treatment. It says that Austin's staff was constrained by medical privacy laws and their own concern about their boss's privacy. Analysts say the review effectively absolved the Pentagon of any wrongdoing in Austin's secret hospitalizations in December and in January. Earlier this month, Austin apologized for failing to send notice to United States President Joe Biden and senior staff about his recent prostate cancer diagnosis.
U.S. President Joe Biden engaged in an interview with late-night host Seth Meyers while in New York following a campaign event with donors. President Biden, who has been selective in his interactions with media, chose the late night with Seth Meyers to discuss various matters, reflecting his pursuit of alternative avenues to connect with voters ahead of the upcoming presidential election. During the interview, he disclosed ongoing talks with Israel regarding a potential month-long pause in the conflict against Hamas. The discussion took place against the backdrop of a Free Palestine protest in the lobby of the show. Following the recording, President Biden and Meyers shared a moment over some ice cream, with Biden verifying the details provided during the interview.
Well, I hope by the beginning of the weekend, the end of the weekend. At least my national security advisor tells me that we're close. We're close. It's not done yet. And my hope is by next Monday, we'll have a ceasefire.
Canada has introduced a draft legislation aimed at holding tech platforms accountable for harmful content. The proposed Online Harms Act targets a range of problematic content, including material that sexualizes children and promotes hate speech. Key provisions of the legislation include measures to make tech companies responsible for addressing 7 categories of harmful content and also increasing criminal penalties for disseminating hate speech online. Canadians would also be given the ability to request a removal of harmful content within a strict 24-hour time frame with provisions for a review process. The 7 distinct categories of harm includes the dissemination of intimate content without consent, incitement to violence and extremism, cyberbullying targeting children, and content that encourages self-harm among minors, among others.
Aid packages are airdropped over Gaza as Israel warns of its plan to invade Rafah. Carlo Valdez has more.
Packages of aid are seen from Rafah being dropped from planes over the Gaza Strip. This as the Jordanian Armed Forces announces that 2 of their aircraft and a French one would drop supplies on 11 locations across Gaza. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres warns that an invasion of Rafah in far southern Gaza would put the final nail in the coffin of aid operations. Guterres says Rafah is the core of the humanitarian aid operation in the besieged Gaza Strip. It is where 1.4 million Palestinians live in crowded shelters near the Egyptian border. Israel says its army had readied a plan to move civilians out of the packed city. As tensions simmered across the region, Israel fired the first strikes on Lebanon's east since the start of the Gaza war. Those killed 2 Hezbollah fighters. Carlo Valdez for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Yemen's Houthi rebel group fired missiles, leaving damage to UK ship Ruby Mar in the Red Sea. The U.S. military says that MV Ruby Mar, a Belize-flagged UK-registered Lebanese-owned vessel, was loaded with over 41,000 tons of fertilizers during the course of the attack. The damage sustained by the Ruby Mar is potentially the most significant to a vessel caused by an attack launched by the Houthis, who have been targeting commercial shipping in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden for months. The said incident is different from the hijack attacks of the Houthis, as this time it sank the cargo ship. U.S. officials say that the attack created an 18-mile-long slick in the Red Sea as it continues to leak on the water. The unending attacks caused a massive effect from the ships passing the Suez Canal. The crew on board the ship was immediately evacuated, while the leaks from the damage of the attacks could lead to an environmental disaster.
South Korea announced a reform plan for listed companies to improve shareholder returns to reduce the phenomenon called Korea discount on stock prices. The government's Financial Services Commission said its Corporate Value Up program aims to prioritize shareholder returns through various incentives, including tax benefits. Analysts believe Seoul is taking a leaf out of Japan's playbook to boost the value of its companies. Tokyo's stock market surged to a record high last week due to years of corporate governance reforms and other steps to encourage share buybacks, lower cross-holdings, and increase dividends.
A woman working at the BP oil company reported her husband for insider trading. Tyler Ludon pleaded guilty to insider trading charges, claiming that he earned $1.76 million based on non-public knowledge of BP's acquisition of Travel Centers of America. Ludon's wife said she and Tyler worked in home offices within 50 or 20 feet of each other. Tyler said he eavesdropped on his wife's work calls, saying he wanted to make enough money so that his wife did not have to work long hours anymore. Tyler has been ordered to surrender the illegal profits and pay a separate fine of the same amount. Up next, a runaway train in India reaches top speeds. The Eiffel Tower reopens to tourists after a strike. And smartphone makers bet on AI to boost sales. Please don't go away. We've got more stories when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Tinola.
Ang aking tinola.
Bakit naging specialty?
Dahil sa ingredients.
Nasaan ang Dapi? Wala po rin pa talaga nakakita niya kay Dapi.
Ano si Dapi?
Ang sarap na itong tinola mo. Lalo na to yung chicken, no?
Hindi. Hindi yan chicken. Pato yan.
Pato? Ang ibig kong sabihin, yung kinain ko si Dapi ko! Dapi! Makape ka naman, kaibigan.
Let's get together. Sunday 25. Sunday 25.
Stocks, money market, cryptocurrency, properties are just some of the common investment vehicles we are familiar with. Vince Rapisura, financial guru and a successful social entrepreneur who founded the Social Enterprise Development Partnerships, will let us in the world of cooperatives as an investment vehicle. Learn about the functions of cooperatives and how it helps small entrepreneurs access financing as they open for business.
Itong investment na ito ang pang-retirement, pangpatayo ng bahay, pagpaaral sa aking anak. Kaya mo ba talagang ilagay yan sa isang investment na pwede kang malugi? So, you go into safer investments.
Open for business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m.
Sunday 25.
A fish hit a weather reporter during a live broadcast amid a powerful storm in Norway. The bizarre moment became known and viral on the internet. The video attracted diverse reactions online, from amusement at the unexpected scenario to appreciation for the reporter's composure in facing such an unusual hurdle. Currently, Norway is being lashed by its most formidable storm in over 30 years. Over the week, strong gusts of wind reaching up to 180 kilometers per hour swept through many regions of the Scandinavian nations.
Indian Railways said an investigation is underway to trace the cause of a driverless train's escape after it traveled a 70-kilometer trip. Railways authorities noted that the train was loaded with gravel before it went off track. Northern Railway spokesperson Deepak Kumar disclosed that no one was hurt in the incident. Local media reported the incident occurred after the train stopped at a railway station in Jammu for a crew change. The train, however, began to move down a slope after it was left unattended by the driver.
Firefighters have struggled to contain a massive blaze on Rock Island cattle barn in Illinois. Rock Island Fire Marshal Greg Marty said that no people were hurt during the blaze. Barn employees said that about 20 cattle were at the burn when the fire erupted. Rock Island Fire Department also cut off power lines for safety reasons, resulting in power outages in the area. Mid-American Energy, the company that provides electricity to the area, said about 800 customers have been affected by the circuit cutting.
In Iraq, many farmers are grappling with the contamination of their lands due to crude oil spills, exacerbating the challenges of drought already plaguing them. Nestled among the hills of Salahuddin province, once fertile fields now bear witness to puddles of thick black liquid, transforming vast expanses of agricultural land into barren wastelands.
الله اللي يحدث هو النفط ما أخذ منتهى الأرض كلها. شو يحطون حباية بيها تفسد الحباية ما ظل بها فايدة الأرض. هذيك القاع ونشوفها عبنها ما أمرها النفط شوف شلون صايرة صلوات. وهذا اليوم صارت كم سنة يفتحونها هاي قشة بالشفل العام. وهسه عادت نفس الشيء. ومحتمل إذا يجي فيض أكثر يصير بعد أحش.
Authorities attribute this environmental catastrophe to the actions of religious extremists from the IS group. However, local farmers also expressed frustration at the sluggish response from the authorities in addressing the contamination and restoring their lands to their former fertility.
ناشدنا بها رئاسة الوزراء والسيد وزير الزراعة والسيد وزير النفط لتعويض الفلاحين المتضررين من هذه الكارثة البيئية أسوة ببقية الفلاحين الذين تم تعويضهم في المناطق الجنوبية إلا أنه لم نجد شيء.
Spanish police have arrested one of France's most wanted fugitives in Tarragona. Police said that the man is considered to be the leader of a criminal organization to drug trafficking. Authorities disclosed that he was purportedly responsible for selling drugs in Marseille. He was also involved in the exportation of cannabis in Spain. The man is facing a sentence of 10 years of imprisonment in France for drug trafficking, illicit possession of weapons, crimes against public order and security, and membership in a criminal organization. Spanish police said the operation to track the notorious fugitive began last year. This is after the man's disappearance in France in March after using 4 different identities to avoid the police.
The Eiffel Tower in Paris reopens to visitors after 6 days of closure due to strikes. Workers first walked out in a dispute over the way the tower was managed. Its operator, Société d'Exploitation de la Tour Eiffel, or SETE, said a deal was reached with unions over the weekend. It is the second such strike at the iconic landmark in the last 3 months as Paris looks ahead to hosting the 2024 Olympic Games this summer. SETE apologized to ticket holders and said they would be reimbursed for booking impacted by the action, which resulted in the loss of some 100,000 admissions. The powerful Confederation General du Travail Union said that staff had decided to strike over SETE's business model, which it claimed was based on an inflated estimate of future visitor numbers and an underestimation of the cost of maintenance and renovation. Strikers have also expressed concern over the state of the monument, which Le Monde reported had not been repainted for 14 years rather than the usual 7, with other repair work falling behind schedule. This week's strike was first planned to take place across 5 days, but CGT on Friday announced that staff had voted to extend the strike to Saturday after rejecting SETE's initial proposal.
Signatories of the United Nations Security Council call on the Taliban to immediately take back all policies and decrees that repress women and girls. EJ Gonzalez has more.
In a joint statement, the 11 Security Council signatories of the Statement of Shared Commitments for the Principles of Women, Peace, and Security demand the Taliban to rescind laws violating women's and girls' rights. Guyana's ambassador to the UN and president of the Security Council for February 2024, Carolyn Rodriguez Burkett, says women and girls must have full exercise of their human rights and fundamental freedoms.
We strongly condemned condemn the Taliban's continued systemic gender discrimination and oppression of women and girls in Afghanistan, and demand that the Taliban immediately rescind all policies and decrees that repress women and girls, including restrictions on education at secondary and tertiary levels, women's right to work, freedom of movement, and freedom of expression. Women and girls must have full exercise of their human rights and fundamental freedoms in public, political, economic, cultural, and social life.
Rodriguez Burkett underscores that sustainable peace, stability, and development in Afghanistan can only be achieved with an inclusive political process underpinned by respect for the rule of law and the human rights of all Afghan people. A process, she says, in which the rights of women and girls are fully respected and the voices of all Afghans are represented.
Afghanistan's international obligations must be respected. There must be accountability for human rights abuses and crimes against women and girls. Harsh winter conditions and natural disasters are compounding the already dire humanitarian situation in Afghanistan. We call on the Taliban to ensure that women are part of the needs assessments, planning, and delivery of humanitarian aid, recognizing that their absence is having negative impacts on such aid reaching women, children, and older persons.
EJ Gonzalez from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
In Barcelona at the Mobile World Congress, smartphone makers are packing their latest devices with flashy new artificial intelligence tools. Jeff Sanidad tells us more.
The Mobile World Congress is the telecoms industry's biggest annual show. The trend on display during the 4-day event in Barcelona, Spain, are smartphones with artificial intelligence tools such as real-time voice translation and advanced photo editing. Handset makers focus on the unique AI-powered features of their new flagship devices. This in efforts to reignite consumer demand. Chief researcher at CCS Insight, Ben Wood, says phones have just got boring. He says they are not as exciting as they used to be. The changes from one model to the next, he says, are not as great as they used to be. Wood adds, while cameras, battery life, and screens are a little better than before, companies need to add more exciting capabilities to their products. This to encourage people to upgrade their phones. And the way to do that, Wood says, is through AI. As AI's capabilities unfold before the world's eyes, Chief Marketing Officer at Mobile Network Lobby Group GSMA, Lara Dewar, says humans must always be at its center.
I think we don't even know yet how AI will impact the use or the advantages that we can build into phones. But certainly we believe as an organization that if we keep humans at the center of all development relative to AI, that we can address big challenges and things that we face in everyday life through AI. So we're very excited to see what's happening next.
Jeff Sanidad for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The Supreme Court of the United States hears arguments from Florida and Texas that could affect how social media platforms regulate content. The Supreme Court is weighing how much freedom tech platforms should have over what people post, meaning the court is set to balance the scales between the First Amendment rights with principles of free speech, and whether platforms should be considered town squares. States' laws of Texas and Florida are slightly different, but both argue the same thing. Social media platforms like Meta and YouTube do not have a First Amendment right to ban certain user-generated content based on politics or viewpoint. NetChoice, arguing on behalf of the tech companies, has repeatedly said platforms have a First Amendment right to moderate and remove user content per their own rules. Legal experts say the main issue in the case is who should control the internet, appearing to leave the door open to possible internet regulation laws in the future. The Supreme Court is expected to issue a decision by June.
French brand Renault unveils its new battery-powered R5 at the Geneva International Motor Show. Renault's chief designer Guy Vidal says the R5 model is a modern design for a younger generation. He says that the new model features bits and pieces from the Renault 5 from 1972 and a nod to its historical design.
Challenge when you do a retro-futuristic exercise like this is to be able to recognize the car, the historical car. And there are bits and pieces from the Renault 5 from 72, but also Super 5, and also the turbo with the wide shoulders, and the strong stance on the road, the dynamic stance on the road.
Coming right up, Poke fans celebrate Pokemon Day. The Philippine national men's football team is getting a new brand. And the 2024 Independent Spirit Awards celebrates unity in diversity. Catch the latest in sports and entertainment. Mata ng Agila International will be back.
Mansa rin natin bukas. Sabihin mo lang kung ano ang request mo, ibibigay ko sa iyo.
Anong ginagawa mo? Nakiliti ako sa bigote mo. Please, huwag na makakarating kay Ever to, please. Sinundan ko yung favorite vlogger ko. Ayan, oh. Ayaw kasi ni Ever na napapaliw ako dyan.
Eh baka pwedeng mag-request sa'yo na makidalan mo na lang ako ng pamalit na damit. Nasa bahay ka lang naman, di ba?
Oo naman, nasa bahay lang ako sa'yo. Saktong nagtitiklop ako ngayon ng damit, ha?
At si May forever.
Santi po ako.
Ayaw na nga, sabit.
Bakit ka naman, Nay? Anong klaseng labang ginawa mo dyan sa mga damit ko? Bakit may mansa pa rin? Lalo, ba't mo nilagyan ng ink? Ba to? Ay! Ano to? Ay, baka pinalaban mo ng aso! You are fired! Huwag ka naman masyadong malupit.
Love, Bosleng, and Tali. Tuwing linggo, alas 6 ng gabi dito lang sa Net 25.
Let's net together sa Net 25.
Researchers in Japan found an extremely rare species of Chinese giant salamanders that is said to be surviving in Japan. Professor Nishikawa Kanto of Kyoto University announced that they discovered a living example of Andreas ligoi, or popularly known as South China giant salamander. According to the red list published by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, these salamanders belong to endangered species. These salamanders, which inhabited limited areas of southern China, greatly decreased in number due to overcatching of its foods. Chinese salamanders have been brought to Japan in the past, resulting in hybridization with other Japanese species. The researchers conducted genetic screenings from the collected samples of about 73 salamanders believed to have descended from Chinese salamanders found in Japan. During the course of the research, they found that 4 salamanders actually belong to the species Andreas ligoi. Professor Nishikawa believed that these Chinese salamanders are already extinct in China. He further added that he wants to search for more, as there can be other rare salamanders remaining in aquariums and zoos in Japan.
Milan Fashion Week 2024 has featured a metaphorically trashy collection. AV's Beate Carlson has once again applied her unconventional and bizarre ideas on the catwalk. With models paving through the runway, literal trash was thrown on them, symbolizing online trolling and hate towards the brand's fashion. This was not the first time Carlson drew attention with her runway. In September, AV featured a summer-spring 2024 collection with theme No Time to Design, No Time to Explain. The show started with models rushing to the runway half ready and striving to finish their look.
Poke fans rise as they celebrate National Pokemon Day this 27th of February. This day marked the date in 1996, the debut of the first Pokemon game, Pokemon Red and Green versions in Japan. Pokemon is a contracted term for Satoshi Tajiri's Pocket Monster. The entire franchise is entirely owned by Nintendo, Game Freak, and Creatures. Today, Pokemon has turned 28. The Pokemon Company, on its part, is also preparing a big surprise in its Pokemon presence this evening. Pokemon has brought the joys of childhood and nostalgia to those for Pokefans, especially during the annual event.
The Philippine men's national football team is entering a new era with a new head coach and probably a new name. Following the presentation of Tom St. Viet as the new coach of the national team, the Philippine Football Federation also announced that they have opted to change the Ascals moniker.
Well, right now we just call the team Philippine Men's National Team. So right now we're not even thinking about the moniker. We're just preparing for the matches in Iraq. So we're hard at preparation for that. We feel that while the Ascals name was great, but it has served its purpose, and we feel like we're going into a next step of Philippine football.
In the mid-2000s, the Ascals moniker was coined by players, coaches, and certain fervent Filipino football enthusiasts, both domestically and internationally. Throughout the past decade, the moniker has been carried on by the national team throughout their highs and lows. But with a change in management, the PFF believes it's time for the team to elevate and start fresh in 2024. For now, the Philippine men's national football team has yet to adopt a new moniker, but expect Filipino football fans to send in their suggestions, especially as the national team heads to battle against Iran in the upcoming 2026 FIFA World Cup and 2027 AFC Asian Cup second round qualifying match.
Australian police say they are investigating a 71-year-old man for the alleged assault of a photographer in Sydney in the early hours of Tuesday. The accuser identified the man as Taylor Swift's father. Bernadette Rogini has the details.
51-year-old Ben McDonald reports to police that he was assaulted by who he claims was Taylor Swift's dad, Scott Swift. McDonald said he had been photographing the U.S. pop icon on a super yacht in Sydney Harbor after the last of her 4 gigs in the city. He alleges Swift's security put an umbrella in his face to prevent him from taking photographs of the celebrity as she made her way to a waiting vehicle. After Swift departed, McDonald claimed Taylor Swift's father approached and punched him. A spokesperson for Taylor Swift has accused 2 unnamed individuals of pushing, grabbing, and threatening behavior at the time a photographer was allegedly assaulted by the star's father. Bernadette Rogini from Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Held amidst the awarding season's industry giants, the 2024 Independent Spirit Awards shines a spotlight on film and television's indie artists. Catherine Ortula has the scoop.
The Independent Spirit Awards held its 39th ceremony at California's Santa Monica Pier, which gave recognition to this year's standalone artists in TV and film. For the television categories, Netflix's Beef won Best New Scripted Series and Best Lead Performance for actress Ali Wong. The Last of Us stars Nick Offerman and 11-year-old Kayvon Montreal Woodard won Best Supporting Performance and the Breakthrough Performance Award for a new scripted series, respectively. Past Lives became one of the top recipients of the night, winning Best Feature and Best Director for the feature film debut of its writer and director, Celine Song. Devin Joy Randolph also won the Best Supporting Performance for her role in The Holdovers, not a day after receiving the SAG Awards Best Supporting Actress right across town. The Oscar-nominated film Four Daughters by Catherine Benhania takes the Spirit Awards corresponding title for Best Documentary. Justin Triet's Anatomy of a Fall, also nominated for Oscar's Best Picture, won Spirit's Best International Feature. The John Cassavetes Honorarium, given to the film made with less than $1 million budget, was received this year by Babak Jalali for Fremont. Chosen nominees who built their way with only a budget cap of $20 million are those set to receive this year's Spirit Awards. This is to celebrate creations that are often overlooked or under-nominated by other award-giving bodies. Catherine Ortula for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
And to send you off today, here's a quote from American professional wrestler Eliatu Joseph Anoa'i. Don't worry about the pressure or the responsibility. Just live in it, have fun, and when everything seems to be going right, just stay humble and remember your family.
And I think that also applies to our lives. It doesn't have to be your, family through blood. It could be family within your workspace, within your friends. Whenever you have self-doubt, you can always turn to them to encourage you.
That is so true. And if ever there is indeed pressure or responsibilities, I think those are the two things that actually give life more meaning.
Oh, that's very true.
So before we say goodnight this Tuesday, for those of you who are still on the road, please tune in to Eagle FM 95.5.
You can also catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Lago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
For choosing Mata ng Agila International, your trusted news source, connecting you to the world and on point with stories from around the globe. Follow, like, and subscribe to @Net25 TV.